Hello and welcome to Dice on Ice. This is A Free Man's Will, a Harbinger game set on the far, cold desert moon of Thoth, far from Bastion, far from its many moons. The wind of Thoth, the moon of Thoth has strong winds, picking up sand and dirt, things barren of life. The wind blows. Silent. There's no one here. Just more rocks and stone and dirt and dust. In the horizon, we see a cloud. Not a cloud that might rain. Not a cloud that blots out the sun. It's a cloud that comes from the ground itself. A dust cloud. And it grows bigger and bigger and bigger. The cloud is coming from a wicked machine of salvaged parts, covered in rust, oxidized from the harsh elements. It floats off the ground a mere 10 or 15 feet. It's zooming past at a unimaginable velocity. It's steered by a figure wearing gruesome helmet and other armored bits. We see that this is not the only person creating this cloud. A whole drove of them, each bike and each person as unique as another. A swarm of them. We see where they're headed as we look, as the camera shifts. A great mound comes from the earth. It is not red, it is not rust-colored that the moon of Thoth is. No, it is a shiny, polished silver. A great orb of a great structure long buried beneath the sands. We see from this structure 4 figures riding and driving in the opposite direction from these bikers. 3 on the backs of an alien creature known as an Anian, 6-legged, 12-lunged camel-like creature. And the last one is on a bike salvaged from his own parts, and parts he's acquired on his many journeys. Slugs begin to fly. Not the slugs, I mind you, that are these creatures that get sizzled up by salt. No, slugs of lead, as they embed themselves in the dirt, spraying up dirt and debris and grit. They fly off as explosions come from all around you, you 4. These riders behind you are fast approaching, double or even triple the speed of your Anians as they sprint on their 6 legs. And soon they catch up. I'd like all 4 of you, please, to roll initiative. Rost, you are in the rear. Your Anian is weathered and old and haggard from your many travels. A bit of lead fired from some ballistic behind you strikes the leg of your Anian, causing it to stumble. It does not collapse because it has 5 other working legs, but it begins to limp and hobble in a strange way that only a 6-legged animal could. You've been hit. Your animal's been hit, at least. You look back, you see 4 right up next to you, within 5 or 10 feet. Over the sound of their hover bikes, you can hear the mute sounds of their cackles and grins and howls and hoots. Their faces you cannot see, for they're covered in goggles and face masks and things that will protect them from passing debris and kicked up dirt. What do you do as they jab and poke at your Anian with rusted spear tips, sling lead and bullets from their makeshift blasters. What do you do?
Grit and I are not unaccustomed to such aggression in the wastes. So, I think Rost kind of pulls his mask a little tighter up over his mouth. It kind of locks in. He takes a couple breaths, trying to keep his composure, and then you hear, kind of like in the same rumblings of their cackles, he laughs too, and it's this sickening, like, gurgled laugh. All right, boys, you want to play rough? Let's play rough. And he pulls back on the reins, kind of wheeling his Anine to the side. He pulls his legs in on his haunches and kind of he pulls a bow from his back, holding the reins in one hand, and pulls back the string, picking up arrow and trying to notch it right into one of these bikes. He wants to try to kind of peg if he can, I'd like to try to peg either the engine or however this hover bike is floating. I want to try to pin it and have the bike flip.
Yeah, you see that this bike itself is a jury-rigged amalgam of just bits and baubles and parts and scrap. You see there's a few weak points where maybe like you can catch it in part of the thruster, or have it catch in the underside of the bike and have it twist and catch on something that's flying over. Absolutely.
Awesome. So that's what I'm going to try to do. So Rost is going to wheel about, and the first shot is going to be just completely regular with just the regular arrow. All right, yeah, that's going to be great. That's going to be a 24 to hit.
Yeah, and so it catches, and you strike a part of the thruster. Okay, on the one side. It's like it's just barely stapled on the thin cords, and you sever one of them, and this thruster just drops a little bit, but that's completely steers this bike off its course. So rears off to one side.
That's my goal. I would try to knock him off the bike, but my goal is to slow them down more so than actually like killing them outright first off.
So it steers off course. Node, you're far ahead of these Anine behind you. You have your own levibike.
Yeah, the levibike of Node, like you mentioned earlier, is kind of fused out of these necrotech parts. Almost this world's equivalent, the setting's equivalent of like a Harley chopper. And it's got this necrotech skull kind of on the front with the headlight kind of in its open mouth. And is there a sandstorm, or is it just the one that's coming from the rigs behind us?
It's just from the rigs themselves, and the breakneck speed you're going at is the wind.
Okay. So looking back and noticing that he's pulled ahead quite a bit, God, I don't know. This guy's kind of a piece of shit. He'd probably just leave them behind. But I don't want to do that. So I think what he's going to do is slow enough to kind of turn to the side and level his carbine at whoever is kind of one of the front runners of this group of wastelanders, and he is going to attempt to shoot at them. He's going to target the driver, as long as he's not behind some kind of, armored cage or something.
Yeah, nothing like you can see that. I mean, it's kind of like some sheet metal thing, but it's not really much protective.
Okay. As long as I can actually see a clean shot or a cleanish shot, then I'm going to take it. Oh, what is the range for me?
This is about 50 feet back from you.
Okay, so it's within my close range for carbine. So I'm going to shoot him in the face, maybe. That's a 22.
Awesome. Yeah, you spray some bullets. It kind of dents into that like face covering, kind of like half cover, but then you kind of correct and you just blast him in the face. How much damage is this?
Let's see. D10 plus 5. That's 13 points of damage.
Yeah, this is enough to completely steer him off. Like, just from this damage, you damage the hull and the driver enough. Like, you're actually puncturing through that like sheet metal shield in the front, and just like this blood curdling that's barely audible through the drone of this wicked madness. Just he slumps off this levibike, but the levibike continues onwards and kind of steers off and crashes as it plummets into the sand without a driver, and it just kicks up a bunch of dust.
And over the comm links, he says, "I think that might be another one you owe me."
As we look back, we can see that some of these raiders have not been following you. Some are staying back at that wreckage way back ways, but there's enough of them following you to make it, a pressing ordeal. 1 down, 11 more to go. These 11 keep accelerating on their makeshift bikes. The ones up near you, Ross, you've kind of halted and shot your arrow. These 2 of them act in unison with these long, jagged, rusted spears and try and just like skewer the heck of your aiming. Those both hit. And your aiming, which has the stats of a horse, which you can find in your player's handbook of D&D 5e. I'll look it up for you. It's going to take 21 points of damage from this hearing, which is enough to slay it. As a horse has about 13 hit points.
Yeah. So you see Ross, he knows what's about to happen. I think he kind of braces himself for it because he sees these 2 bikes kind of moving up alongside him, the spears in hand, ready to strike. And with a bum leg, Grit is just not fast enough to sort of like wheel around and turn and continue moving. And as he's trying to kind of rear up and pull back, one goes into the side and one goes into the gut, and then like he has to bail out. And so I think he's going to try and bail out without attempting any like if he can. Obviously, he wants to try to protect his Anine and protect Grit, but Grit's going down. There was no way. With the mutations that had happened and the stab wounds, he was already a bum horse on his last leg. So he's going to bail out and roll out and kind of fall into the sands, hopefully with enough kick up that he's kind of hidden for a minute so he can kind of get his bearings.
In this great collision, I need you to make a dexterity saving throw, Ross.
That's fine. Yeah. Yeah, there we go. Cool. That's going to be 18.
You're able to roll with it as you kind of like get tossed into the dirt, and just kind of roll and tumble, and you see through the dust that's been kicked up, those bikes kind of whiz past you, and you see like 5 more whiz past you once again, and it seems like now in this brief moment you're behind this group, although you're on foot. In the meantime, the other of these raider bikers steer up and they kind of divert and split in two, pinching off Andala and Finn on their Anians. You see that one of these bikes has 2 of these raiders on them, and he's standing on the rear, and he looks like he's biting something and throws it, and then a few seconds later explodes with shrapnel at you, Finn. And then you're gonna need to make me a either a dexterity saving throw or a animal handling roll, please, to try and guide your Anian without taking the full blunt of this.
So I got a 12.
And which was it, animal handling or dex save?
Dex save.
Okay, so you're gonna take both you and your Anian are gonna take 8 points of damage from this shrapnel blast. And Andala, just from mere distance, you're gonna take 2 points of damage. As your Anian and you just get kind of splattered and splintered with collateral. And on your side, Andala, this levibike raider kind of like a great gout of flame extends from this jury-rigged flamethrower affixed to its side. It shoots out in 3 of these pipes on its right side, catching you in flame. You're going to take some fire damage unless you can make a dexterity save or an animal handling check, please.
Was that me or Finn?
Andala, yes.
Oh, sorry. That would be 13.
All right, you're going to take the full force of this of 12 fire. But your Anian, though, has thick fur. And although it stinks to high heaven, it's only going to take 6 of this. Reminder that your Anians have 13 total hit points. And you hear more hoots and howls and cackles as these riders kind of push off from these main Anians and pursue Node further. Finn, what do you do as this shrapnel's just bitten into your side, opening wounds that were just merely closed prior?
Finn lets out a scream, high-pitched, bloody spittle coming from his mouth. But he would immediately swing to the side and slow his Anian down so he can get out of the pinch point of these riders. And he is actually going to veer off and head back towards Rost, who is now on the ground, right? So if he can, he's going to make this arc to kind of double back. Pick up Rost. Would I be able to make it, or would Finn be able to make it there?
Absolutely. We have to go kind of against the grain, against the school of fish, you can imagine. And your Anian is just kicking and howling and very, very unloving right now of your commands. So, animal handling check, please.
Now, that movement to veer away, would that be my movement or my action as well?
That'll be your movement, and then you get your action to kind of like come back to Rost.
Okay.
It'll be a double move, yeah.
Okay. Right. So animal handling. That's a 22.
Yeah, so you're able to, despite your mount's predilections, you're able to make it back to Rost.
I imagine that while he's on the side, he just begins to whisper into the Aineen's ear. And just begins to, like, kind of stroke its head, like, while he's pulling it to make this arc. And he is actually going to grab the injured parts of this Aineen and just begin to trace over them very closely. And you only see this black flash for an instant. And underneath the fur, these wounds would begin to knit. They would begin to form these horrific looking scabs. There are many of these under Finn's Aineen's fur. But I'm going to, as a bonus action, cast Revitalize on my Aineen and heals him 4 points.
Woo!
But yeah, so Finn would be going back around to get to Rost.
And Rost, you see Finn arrive, doubling back, and you're now at the tail of all this swarm of war boys, as we put them in the chat. Andala, though, you've been blasted with a gout of flame from this flamethrower bike. What do you do?
Yeah, reeling in pain, and I mean her Anine is also quite damaged. She's going to veer away in the opposite direction that Finn just did, looking to find any sort of outcropping of rock or anything to kind of put a little bit of cover between her and these war boys.
As you scan your surroundings in this chaos, the only rocks you can see are barely waist height, even if any at that. You look farther in distance, and through the haze of the heat and the dust, you can see that the way you're headed has this big outcropping, mountains perhaps, or canyons, or even just some kind of rocky landscape, something that erupts from these flat desert dunes. But it's far off, maybe a mile or so.
Andala's going to head towards that way. And meanwhile, while she's trying to get her Anine to head that direction, she's going to pull out her short scattergun. And if she has time, she would fire it at this point. Otherwise, she will just get it ready for firing on the next round.
You could definitely fire it this turn.
Okay. I'm going to fire at... How many were around me at this point?
There are 3 kind of encircling you. One of which is a flamethrower one. The other 2 are just generic warboy.
Okay, let's aim for the flamethrower warboy.
Yeah, you notice that this side of the hull is, like, again, kind of fortified with sheet metal and scrap, but your scattergun might be able to penetrate it.
14.
That will catch on this cover that they've built. It kind of clinks and scatters and ricochets off. It didn't hit quite at the right angle or threshold to puncture it.
Yeah, she'll continue to ride.
And so you spur your Aineen to further continue, but these bikers are gaining on you and now kind of almost encircling you and trapping you with their movements and their ridings. Rost, on foot now, you stand. What do you do?
In the dust, he stands up, brushes himself off, and he sees this Anine begin to sort of ride up toward him. Finn is heading in that direction to sort of pick him up. Now, he was able to get there, correct?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. So as this sort of, I imagine it's all happening in a very short period of time, right? So the dust cloud sort of goes up as he hits the ground. Then the Anine sort of comes by, and if his hand can just like jut out from the sands, I think he kind of catches in on one of these jowls of this Anine and kind of pulls himself up onto the side of this Anine. And he gets set behind Finn. You think you can keep this thing steady for a while? I need to go hunting. And this time, instead of just one, you see him pull 2 arrows and notch both. Hold it steady. Hold it steady. And he's going to try to hit 2 bikes from the back and send them flipping backwards, if possible, and throw the riders off.
All right, you try to catch 2 with 1 arrow. Give me an attack roll, please.
All right, so the first one was a 19, and then the second one was an 11. Because I can, with being a treader, I get 2 attacks. So the 2 arrows went flying. One of them misses, but one of them should hit, hopefully.
Yeah, one of them bounces harmlessly off of the hull of one of these bikes. The other whoosh, punctures, actually passing through a small kind of mesh cage-like structure that guards one of these drivers. And how much damage does this arrow deal?
That would be 13 damage.
Is he able to completely knock this man right in the back of the skull? He slumps forward, slamming on his steering device of this bike, causing him to swerve, and actually it crashes into another one of his companions. And they kind of rough and tumble, crashing about. And this is right next to you, Andala, just as these 6 or 7, you can't even count them now in this chaos, have kind of almost encircled you entirely. One of them kind of steers off a bit from the sudden head injury, crashes and smashes into another, and they're both careened and flying and just dismantled and dismembered by this wreckage. And Node, you're putting this all behind you with your fast bike as you kind of reared up and shot from behind. You notice that some have peeled off from this group, leaving behind to encircle Andala, but some have begun to pursue you further. What do you do?
How many seem to be approaching me?
Just a mere 2.
2. Okay. Then still where he's kind of pulled sideways a little, he's going to kind of try to take a breath, put the carbine in the crook of his arm, and is going to fire once and then slide over and fire a second time.
All right.
As I also have extra attack and forgot to do that last round.
The thunder of your carbine splits your ears.
The first one is only an 11.
You spray the dust and sand as it kicks up from the bullets that are astray. The kickback was too much and they too far off.
The second one, I rolled a 1.
And likewise, just you're unable to get any kind of catch or give these bullets.
They're too close.
They're driving too erratically and they're too close.
And as soon as I fire both of those shots, realizing that they're kind of too close, he's gonna, sling it over his shoulder and get his bike back into gear to move.
And likewise, as you begin to move, these 2 bikers, they kind of peel off from each other, splitting again, dividing, as they race up to you. And they're still just a few seconds behind you now as you kick up your bike once again. but you hear some kind of latch or some heavy grating of metal on one as this big arm extends, almost activated like a trebuchet or a catapult or a lever of some kind. And attached to it, you see, is one of these raiders affixed to it just by a rope and a mere cage, and just launches this raider upon you. He's holding two spears. His face is covered in a silver paint, and just like slams into the bike next to you as one of the spears catch into some groove of your bike. His other arm is dangling. You see that his shoulder has been dislocated by this sudden impact. He's just dangling now, literally attached to your levibike, and you feel the bike kind of lurch from the sudden weight of this, and you kind of have to gamble to correct your course. But you see the silver-faced, masked, no eyes, no mouth hole, as the other arm comes up slowly with that spear and latches in, fully affixed now to your bike. Likewise, or now we move on to Andala, where these 5 now of these bikers have like kind of almost like stopped pursuing you because you're stuck, as they now kind of pinch you off on either sides, both in the front and the back, and they kind of begin to circle you slowly, but picking up speed. They kick up dust, kind of blocking you off with this wall of sand. As you hear the cackles over the sound of the drones of their levibikes and the sand themselves, and gunshots are heard as you feel these whizzing shots. Some miss you and some do hit. That'll be one of them hits you for that'll be 4 piercing damage as just a stray bullet catches you. Looks like we got one. You hear over the drone, over the tornado. And then one you see has peeled off from this group, yet still doubling back now. Back to where Rost and Finn are. One rogue, it seems. A rogue with bloodlust in his eyes and froth at his mouth. This one with a great chain gun attached to this bike. Just this spinning barrel, 6-shot minigun style, just sprays this wake of bullets into the dust in front of you as it kind of catches, or as it gets the proper alignment and aiming, as just like this spray of just micro pellets, sorry, not pebbles, just catches you, sending this cloud of dust, and you can't even see past it anymore. You just feel and hear this just pelleting in front of you, both of you, Rost and Finn. And I need you to make dexterity saving throws, please, as it finally catches onto your position. Rost, you're able to duck out of the way, and likewise, Finn, you're able to steer your Aenean just enough, and just this column of pellets just like literally splits you in half. Not like you as a person, but like the two of you splits you into on either side, and then you see you're divided now by this just wall of dust that these pellets have been bombarding you. That brings us to Finn now. You're now being just hounded down by this minigun bike person. They're fast approaching. They will essentially be colliding with you, or whatever will they have, within the next few seconds. What do you do?
How far away are they approaching?
This one is about 30 feet. The others, one that are circling Andala, will be about 100 feet away. And the ones chasing after Finn now probably be about 200 or so feet away.
You see Finn. I imagine that Rost is behind Finn. And Finn, you see him wipe his mouth with this bloody hand, and he puts it behind him. And he puts his hand just right on your leg. And he, like, just rubs the blood down to your knee. And you can almost hear him over this cacophony of motors. Don't fuck this up. And he is essentially casting bolster onto Rost. Which is essentially, you can add a D4 to any of your ability checks.
Awesome. Thank you. I am excited.
And is that your action, Finn? What do you do with your movement or your bonus?
Finn is going to focus on keeping this Aineen on track and ready to basically make any maneuver that is needed. But just kind of pressing... I can't look at the chat, oh my god. Just basically pressing on, keeping the Aineen running.
So just a moment of silence now for the chat. Rest in peace, chat. Andala, you are now trapped. You've been pinched off entirely. You have no avenue of escape now, as 5 or maybe 6 or maybe 4, however many there are, you can't count them in just this cacophony and chaos of this dust storm that they've kicked up by their own just like activity. And these bullets make you just pause and fear life. What do you do?
So Andala is completely frightened at this point. She's completely surrounded. She doesn't know where any of her comrades are. She kind of drops the carbine that's, I mean, it's not the carbine. I don't have a carbine. The scatter gun that's kind of like she's got a strap around her so she can drop it without losing it. And she reaches quickly into one of her pouches for this almost like a little syringe or something and jabs it into her leg. And at the same time, with one of her hands, it starts to glow with this red Astra, and it basically kind of explodes as this Astra kind of gathers around her and goes against, I'm boosting Astra Bolt to target 3 of the people surrounding me.
Nice. So your body sickens and mutates from the syringe needle. You can feel it crawling through your veins of your leg. It reaches down to your toes and up into your femoral artery and up through your veins, and it reaches your heart. And that's when you feel it through your entire body as you launch these wicked, nasty bolts of radiation from your fingertips and from your eyes and from any other things you point at these 3 Death Rider Raider people. What are your attack rolls?
So in her panic, she's not even really paying attention to where she's aiming. And she gets a 10, an 11, and a 15.
All 3 of those are unable to hit these riders.
Yeah.
As this radiation gets no hold on the metal of their bikes. You're able to connect with any of these. They laugh and they cackle. Ooh, this one's a fixer. This one's a fixer. It's a lucky day for the dogs.
And when she hears that and she sees her shots are going wide, she's going to take another Astra Fade and, as a bonus action, produce this blade in her one hand, made solidly out of Astra.
Ooh. So this blade forms in your hand, and it's green and it's sickly. And it thrums with an energy that spells only death and corruption and mutation. And you hold it in your hand, and you can feel your skin burn as you hold around its hilt. You can feel small microtumors appear on your knuckles and on your palm. And you feel its wickedness and you feel its power. The hoots and howls continue. In fact, they seem to even get pressing in further and almost invigorated, or at least drawn to the fact that you have shown your use of Astra. Rost, as you leap to the side from the spray of bullets, you catch your bearing and stand. You see this minigun wielding rider approaching, and it'll be literally at you in like the next 2 or 3 seconds. What do you do?
Ross is never one to let the wilds of the outskirts like get to him. He knows these people. He's dealt with this. And he knows what he has to do, and he hopes he can do it correctly. With Bolster, he pulls another arrow, notches another 2. This time, if it's possible, Connor, and I want to ask you if this is something that maybe I could do. I'd like to, if there's a way I could light them on fire, I would like to.
You know that their engines are using combustion as a source. You can just tell by the heat and the waves of heat coming off of it on the sand behind them. Even like the bits of glass that spray off behind them too.
Right.
All across this area, just turning sand to glass from the heat of their bikes.
Awesome. So I think what I'm going to do then is I imagine that Ross probably has some form of an oil, some form of a canteen of oil on him, just to kind of either cook food or do whatever with, out there in the wilds. And so he'll like pull this little canister and then dip the tips of the arrows in that oil. Hopefully it'll immediately catch and combust if he catches these things. And he's going to launch these 2 arrows into hopefully the chain gun. He's going to try and like launch it into the gun or into the engine of this thing, so it can just immediately stop its momentum.
Awesome. Yeah, give me some attack rolls, please.
Okay. It's going to be a 21 for the first one and a 14 for the second one, with the first one getting 12 damage, and then the second one, I don't know if it hit, but if it did...
The second one does not.
Does not. Okay, so yeah. So
you strike at the gun, this minigun affixed to this bike. You lodge it in part of its like feeding magazine, whatever that's called, where the bullets get pulled up into the gun itself, and it kind of catches and whirs, and that oil just sparks as it just catches a flame a little bit here. It smokes from just the heat of the firing mechanism itself. It smokes more and just begins to billow out as you see that the bullets themselves are starting to like catch fire and explode far more prematurely than they should. And all of a sudden, just the whole front end, after a mere moment, just blows up from this whole just, whatever the heck that word is, that blanket of bullets just erupts in this just explosion of shrapnel and just gunpowder and death, as the whole front end just blows up and nothing is left but smithereens and like a crater of dirt and dust blown away from what it was.
So yeah,
And
I think in
bits
in
of
that-
land.
in that moment of that lucky shot, he like looks to Finn and is like, "We need to move now. Let's get this thing moving. Right now. Come on. We gotta get to Andala."
And Andala is 100 feet away. All right, Node, you're being pursued. And there's a literal raider just like hanging onto your bike and seems to be like climbing and trying to get a position to get on top right behind you. What do you do?
Looking back and seeing that this guy is on his levibike, he kind of looks over his shoulder. Well, that's just not going to work. Sorry. There's only room for one man on this bike. He's going to reach down next to his boot and pull out this slim dagger that he carries. And as he does so, there's kind of a shift in these kind of yellow orbs that he has for eyes. They just kind of dial for a second, and there's kind of this noise. And on his arm that has pulled this dagger out, kind of within the necrotech of it, you can see like this hose, like this clearish tube that starts to kind of fill with this green glowing liquid as it courses all the way down towards his hand. And there's kind of like this as the servos and stuff in his arms start kind of kicking into hyperdrive. I'm going to use energy weapon as a bonus action. So I'll get a single point of Astra Fade, and my dagger for the next 1 minute, as long as I hold it, is going to deal an additional 1d8 force damage.
Nice. As your robotic arm is just able to pummel things harder than human muscles should.
When it's juiced, at least. And then I will take 2 strikes with that dagger.
Juiced up.
Juiced up. Roids. The first one is a dirty 20.
Dirty 20 is good enough.
Good. Dirty 10 is probably not, though.
Dirty 10 is not good enough.
Okay.
You slash at the wrists or hand or whatever of this. This parasite, this stowaway.
Yeah, does he have any necrotech parts on him?
He is almost naked except for his face mask, which you see kind of a tube is attached to like his back, where a small like plastic bladder is like affixed to his barely naked form. Or I guess, sorry, almost entirely naked form.
But it seems to be all biological. Like he's natural, so to speak.
Yeah. He's a person. All skin and warts and fleshy knobs and tumors and rashes and scrapes and scratches and bruises and bony protrusions.
If he doesn't have any necrotech parts, then he's not worth saving.
He's all flesh.
That is going to be a 10 points of damage.
You're able to just hack and slash, like literally through his wrist that he's like trying to climb up with. And you just kind of clack in there. And you can feel your knife wedge in between his 2 wrist bones. And you pull out, and just like a spray of blood splatters the side of your arm, the blade of the knife, and even the side of your necrotech bike, just with this dark red blood. This person does not flinch in the slightest and continues just to hold on tight and kind of latch onto whatever outcroppings on the bike and pull himself up further.
Yeah, Node looks down and says, "I always wanted racing stripes."
And so this injured but still completely functional raider that's on the back of your bike is able to hoist himself up fully, kind of kneeling or kind of like straddling the bike now, with this kind of short spear. You see it's made of metal with a rusted, sharpened tip, and just like wails back, making no sound. Here, just like stabs you in the back. I guess it'd be your front or your side at least, with this strange kind of twisty stance you're taking. And he does so. Ooh, getting a critical hit. Yikes! I'm glad we're not in Cryfoth right now. All right, at least you should be glad we're not in Cryfoth right now. All right, this is going to be. Oh, not bad, not bad. Points of piercing damage.
I missed. What was that?
17.
Okay, 17.
As just like gets you, maybe finding a spot where your servos are weakest or something. Maybe even slashing at that tube that you said earlier, and like a little bit of green bubbles and froth emits from this, like your coolant tubes, but they're not coolant. It's Astra. Oh, man, my vocabulary is terrible. All right, and lastly, or next, we have. I guess it would be lastly because the other ones we dealt with. This whipping, just kind of like pack of hyenas now. The raiders surrounding you, Andala. They yip and they howl, and some kind of like jump off their bikes, landing kind of in this like arena they've formed now with like the big tracks around, and like two now stand kind of like flexing back and forth, wielding like just like these little knives, these shivs they kind of toss, grimacing on their faces. You can see they wear breather masks that are these. Some even they're just scrapped gear. Some are made of human skin, others of leather, others of metal. Just these nasty things, and they kind of just these two kind of press on towards you, kind of pinching off from either side, and they kind of like weave like snake-like, weasel-like until they kind of like stab you as they try and catch you for an opening. Well, that's another critical hit. As one gets a crit against you, the other gets a 7. So as you able to dodge one, the other catches you just as you leap right into it. Thankfully, they only have shivs. So this is going to be 5 points of piercing damage to you, Andala, despite the critical hit. As you kind of literally land on this rusted blade. And then gunshots further come from up top on these bike stands from wherever in this cyclone of death. That's going to be a hit, dealing to you 11 points of piercing damage from bullets. Finn, you are about 100 feet or so off from Andala being just decimated by these raiders. And you're ways off of Node. Barely even see him now. He's just a pinprick in this chaos. What do you do?
Finn is going to go towards Andala, and he wants to spend his action to urge his Aineen forward, to exert kind of an urgency towards it, to hopefully make it run faster than the already quick pace that they are running.
Awesome, yeah. So that will be, you're aiming with this spurring and your action to kind of just like keep it going, and kind of you're clutching at these gaping, like I won't call them nostrils, but they're in the side of its chest that lead directly to its many lungs. You just pinch them tightly. You grab at that sensitive tissue on the inside. Mucus covers your fingers, but you don't care. You just press and grip tighter. And this causes the Aineen to press forward harder and faster through the pain and the urging you give it. And you're able to reach at least the periphery of these just like riding bikes that encircle what you believe to be Andala at its center.
And he would look back to Rost. You think that opening is good enough for you?
He looks. How far out are they now, roughly?
You're as close as you want to be, essentially, to a cyclone of death. I imagine it's probably between 15 or 20 feet before you really get scared of like those slashy blades that are attached to these bikes in haphazard ways.
He nods. He goes, just keep it steady. And he again kind of gets ready to he'll get himself set to take out one or two of the guys that are closest to Andala.
And as we see Rost pull back on that bowstring, Andala, what do you do at the center of this? As these two shiv-wielding bandits kind of dance back and forth, catching you off guard and trying to just really pack tactics. It seems they're well equipped and well trained, or at least well experienced in fighting dirty like this.
So at this point, I'm still on my Anine. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what side are they on? Are they dancing around like on both sides, or are they
literally 180 degrees from each other? It seems they're, always trying to be having so one of them is outside of your view.
Okay.
They've done this dance before.
When the one hit me with the shiv, she kind of, would grunt, but that was kind of, like just kind of a passing blow almost. But that shotgun blast that hit her just nailed her really good. And I would actually almost imagine that the force of it would actually help knock her off the Anine, and she would fall to one side. And clutching her stomach as much as she can, she would back up against the Anine so that the Anine is at her back and only one of the guys is in front of her. And she would very weakly try to hit him with her that green ichor looking protrusion she's got going. I cross my fingers. 13.
Thankfully, these bandits wear nothing but tattered hides or leathers or cloth even yet. They are not well armored. This is enough to catch them.
Yes. Okay, so that would be 8 points of force damage.
Tell me how you kill this one.
So as weak as the strike is true, and it goes straight into his neck area, kind of between the leather and whatever he's got on his face covering. And she just kind of leans into it, and it's almost like she's not even paying attention where it's going. She's so hurt. And she just, luckily, this blade just kind of slashes right into him. And at the end, like, she's just basically stumbling and clutching her stomach and holding, barely standing at this point, and using the Anine to hold up herself.
And as you stab this bandit right in the neck, you see and you hear the sputtering, kind of bubbly noise happen from inside this breather. And then you see in this tube that goes back to his back of his body, just this red fluid go up and down back behind, and this is leather or even human hide. You can't even tell. It starts to become like blood soaked and red and drips down his chin and like down from his neck hole, and he just sits there spasming on this green blade of nastiness. And the blood and flesh that is surrounding this blade, you can see it actually like almost peeling, as if a sunburn is happening to the skin as it goes red and flakes off, just falling to the ground in a disgusting fashion. Rost, you're on the back of this Anine. You're drawing back on this bowstring, and then you fire, and you put it in the chat, which is a nice thing to do. And you're aiming just at some of these just circling war boys.
Yeah, I'm gonna try to actually take out some of the circling ones with the guns. Like, if I can take out the circling pack, and if I can honestly take out I'd like to take out one of them, and then the other one that's actually on the ground near Andala.
Okay, so first off, you kind of like you see a pattern. You see this one kind of tower, taller than the other bikes, kind of this shoddy tower on top of it. It goes around and around. You're able to kind of like trace it with your bow tip,
right?
And launch it, and you're able to just like stab and impale this person with their own little scattergun, and those 13 damage is enough to knock him from this perch and just lands on the other side of this death wall onto the sand below. And your next shot, you try and like, now that you have this car kind of opening, there's a gap between them, bloop, 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 every few moments. You just time it, and you fire, and you're able to pin the back. It's on the one that is on the aiming side of you, not the one that Undala just gave a new tattoo on the neck. And this man at 14 damage is also just like skewered from behind and just falls face down into the sand.
Yeah. And at that, I think I've used, I'm not sure how many arrows that I would get in a quiver. Connor, I think
it's 12 in a quiver, and you've shot 6 times?
I've shot 6. I'm just trying to keep track of how many I can use before I need to start making more. But yeah, he'll do that, and then I think I'll work toward kind of helping the Anin keep pace with this circle, so we can try to maybe get inside to grab Undala, and then get out in a way. Like if we can somehow maneuver in, grab her, and then move out, that'd be fantastic.
Yeah, I imagine you're kind of like maybe even tapping Finn or just like making a tapping noise at each time, like the passing opening happens, right, just to keep a good rhythm happening.
Right. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Just keeping track of when that opening happens. Node, this silver-faced raider with this wicked spear has stabbed you, puncturing these Astra arteries in your servo arms, and withdrawn, sending the splatter of green kind of oozing down and sizzling out of these tubes, and is preparing for another strike from on top of your own bike. What do you do?
Now, is he like sitting on the seat, like behind me, or is he just on the back?
Kind of on the back portion of the bike.
Okay.
But still kind of straddling it, in a way that you might be able to.
Okay. So in that case, he is going to take that arm that is still wielding this dagger and has this kind of green fuel coursing through it, even though some of it is now leaking. And he is going to stick his arm straight towards this guy, and then with his free hand, literally just pull the brake on the bike. Just full throttle, come to a stop to try to send this guy forward.
So you kind of brace for this braking, but he's like barely have any support, and you just crunch the brakes. You feel the bike kind of just like tip and skid, and it comes to a halt now, kind of crashing into the sand below, kind of doing a nosedive, but it's only like 10 feet off the ground, not too disastrous. You're bracing for this impact, but this person behind you is definitely not, and he gets shot forward just by the momentum as he just like crumbles head first, kind of doing a roll in the sand literally ahead of you. He's just this crumple of flesh. You hear sickening snaps that happen on this collision, but it moves and it slowly rises.
He then pulls the throttle back and opens it all the way to start charging forward as fast as he can. And he takes that dagger he's been holding with the blade proper, is going to kind of switch it around so it's now sticking out the bottom, and then just stick it off the side of the bike nice and low, and he's just going to intend to drive right past him.
Just to drive by. You can make me an attack roll with advantage, please, as this person is technically prone.
That's a 19 and a 25.
Yeah, that'll be good enough. Give me some damage.
All right. It's still juiced up. So that's 6 and 3 is 9 points.
I imagine this knife is a bit longer than most combat knives would be. Maybe even like halfway between a knife and a machete. And it's long enough to completely decapitate this silver-faced bandit, as you just lop this head off with one clean strike with a sharp blade that you've maintained over the years. Maybe haven't used it that often, but here you're really showing its deadliness. And just like the little blood stirred out of that clean cut out of those arteries, the head just rolls, and the body just slumps back down on the sand, headless. We now are from the perspective of one of these raiders. He's steering this bike. He's looking to his side. He's seeing this woman holding this green blade. It glows with that thing he craves most. He can feel it just burning at the back of his mind and in his heart and every inch of his body. He's fixed on that. He yells back, "Get it ready!" And hear this chink chink as the person behind him winches something back. "Ready? Fire!" And just as he says so, this long harpoon just ejects out from the side of this bike. And we see it just whistling past, attached to this steel cord, and it sinks into flesh. We look, kind of zoom out as we see blood trickle from this harpoon wound. We zoom out. We see hair around this harpoon. We see more and more hair. This has struck into the side of your anine, Andala. You see the tip of this harpoon come out, probably even poke you in the back a little bit, as maybe 4 or 5 inches of this harpoon is sticking out of this side of the anine. And the anine is pretty thick, so you can imagine how thick of a point this harpoon has. The anine winces in its low noise as it's winched back and it's dragged in the sand. Now these skid marks are just like in the sand next to you as it's yelping and it's pulling, but it's dying and it's blood spraying, and the blood is spraying from these nostrils out of the side of its body. And then these bullet shots happen again, directed at you now that your cover has been somewhat lifted by this nasty harpoon. You're lucky. That's 11 is the best roll they got with these bullets. Is that enough to hit you? No? So again, just like mistimed maybe, some bullets just catch into the side and just like the spray of dust gets launched up around you, but you feel no sting of lead on your body. Finn, you see that one of these bikes has kind of like almost anchored itself now. You realize it has like this tripod that's kind of wedged into the sand, and it's attached to this long steel cord, and at the tip is Andala's anine being dragged closer and closer to it. Some heavy-duty winch that's being manned, but you can see just like through one little slot, like the head of some raider person just kind of going at it, just reeling it in. But this bike is still, and this causes a kind of a gap in the formation of these circling people. What do you do?
Finn would urge his anine through this gap. But before... So, sorry, I'm just trying to get an image. The guy is sitting on his bike. Is he still...
Yeah, so the bike is perched now on a tripod. I guess you can say like 5 or 10 feet in this circle of people, so that they don't like clothesline themselves on this cord as they kind of circle around it now. And if this is the shape of the circle before, because it's bike people, but it kind of opened up and now it's like this going around.
Right. So Finn is going to direct the anine into this hole where this guy is sitting on the bike with the tripod, but he wants to jump at this guy.
Going to jump at the driver, just like kind of perching his bike, looking at this scene next to him.
Oh, you just muted, or you just, yeah.
And so I don't know how much was cut out of there. You kind of ride up on your anine, Rost behind you. You leap from it now, seeing that driver completely unaware of you. He's too fixated on Dala at the center and her green glow of Astra. You leap from your Aenean. What do you do now as you leave the Aenean behind with Rost soaring through the air?
Finn is going to try and wrap himself around this guy in like kind of like this bear hug, and just kind of with all his strength kind of like hold on to this person, hoping he has the element of surprise. And he is going, if you would still allow this for the action, he would want to swivel his head around. Is there any, like you say they're not wearing that much armor, right?
Yeah, maybe the best they have is some kind of like pauldron piece with like spiky bits on it. But other than that, you see a lot of naked skin on these people.
He is going to try and bite the jugular of this rider. And he wants to try and tear at it.
All right, give me an attack roll, please. This will be an unarmed attack with advantage from the surprise in this badass moment.
So, attack, would that just be like a strength?
You just play it, yeah, straight up strength attack with your proficiency bonus, since everyone technically in D&D terms is proficient with unarmed strikes.
Oh.
Despite what we see in the real world with people punching with a fist with their thumb inside.
That's fun. I didn't know that. That's good to know. So that's going to be a 22.
So you just bare your teeth. Some of them are like rotten, some of them are sharpened. I don't know what you do with your dental upkeep, but it's probably something nasty because you seem like a nasty kind of person, Finn. And you just bite and dig into this flesh. What is this like?
So
we just see this from this perspective. Show us.
So you see him. So we're going to do this from the perspective of Rost. Rost, you see Finn. You would also kind of feel his body just like tense. And he just leaps from this Aenean, wraps himself around this very surprised raider. And in the quickest instant, using that momentum from hitting him, from holding on to him, almost with this scary precision, you see Finn's head go into this raider's neck, and you see him rip back suddenly. And from his mouth dangles a piece of flesh, and a huge grin is on Finn's face as you see these spurts of blood kind of shoot out of this raider's neck.
And what is Finn's strength modifier? Because that will determine the amount of damage you're able to do with this arm strike.
It's a 0.
All right, so you do 1 point of damage with this. But it's enough just to put on a show, and I'll double it. I'll make it 2 damage from this. You hang with this, like, this mutated flesh hangs in your hand, in your mouth, not in your hand. And it's not much, but this kind of hole is opened up in this raider's mouth, and it goes, "What the fuck?" as it whips around with this like kind of axe, made of something welded onto something else and then sharpened to a point because that's all they can salvage. It's barely identifiable. And let's see, that was me. So then on Dala, you have your Aenean just like being reeled back, and your cover that you had from behind you is lifted now as your Aenean is pulled to its death, as you hear its last kind of death wails echo into the wastes around, completely drowned out by the cacophony of these bikes going around it, as your Aenean perishes from this like giant skewering in its chest cavity.
So desperation is kind of setting in with Andala. She's kind of flinging that blade back and forth, just trying to keep people away. Who is left around her right now?
There are 3 bikes left now whizzing around you, and the 4th is kind of perched in this tripod on this like this weird like tripod thing into the sand. There's that there's 2 people on there One is like the driver being, eviscerated at the neck. The other is the winchman, dragging your Anin to its death. And there's the 3 others kind of circling around you, not in equal formation because they're not that coordinated. And these are the ones kind of pelting you with these kind of like scatter shots of their own makeshift guns.
Yeah, so in her desperation, I think she's going to grab another one of those shots and fill herself with some more of this green irradiated substance. And that's going to... Oh no, that just brings me to my fade limit. And send out those radiated bolts at the 3 that are riding around her.
Awesome, yeah. Give me attack rolls, please.
Oh, please. So I got a natural 20 on one and a 3 on another, so that's a 7 and an 18.
Those really high numbers do hit.
Yay!
As you channel this radioactive energy, you feel it mutate your own body. You feel a bit of like a clot in the back of your throat you didn't have there before. You hear the Anin behind you even mutating just in the mere presence of this magic, of this Astra you conjure. And these sickly bolts of radioactive energy leap out from your hands and from your mouth and from your eyes, wherever you launch them as you see fit. 2 of them connect, finding their ways in those gaps in the hull and the sheet metal kind of shieldings, as the 3rd one kind of deflects off harmlessly off the 3rd. How much damage is each of these?
So one of them, how do you do your crits?
You roll 2 of the damage dice instead of 1.
Okay, so then the first one does 8 force, and the non-crit one does 3.
Okay, the crit is able to just cause this nasty burn in one of these drivers' chests, and it creeps out like that sunburn and blisters I described earlier. As it pops and welts and bursts and pus and spray and water and nasty blisterings, and it like just starts burning a literal hole in his chest. We can actually see the flesh kind of boom, boom from his heart. There's that thin layer of membrane is the only thing keeping his actual heart from the outside air. And the thin atmosphere begins to kind of pull and cause him a bit of, I guess, swelling or kind of inflation in his chest now, as like the air kind of leaks out of his lungs into the air, into the atmosphere itself, as he kind of swells up slowly. He is dead from this, not quite from just like brutal evisceration, but from bodily shock, as a person would have when they're sickly irradiated to the point that their heart is exposed. And he slumps unconscious / dead. You're unable to tell in this chaos. This bike is no longer driven, and then begins to nosedive as it's kind of steered off course into the sand around this area you're in.
And I think she would kind of stumble towards basically where her Anin is being drugged. Just anything to get away from the remaining bikers as much as possible.
Rost, you're on the back of this Anin by yourself now, as you see Finn just bite into the jugular of one of these raiders. The reins, I guess the figurative reins, are in your hands now. Literally speaking, the chest nostrils of this Anin are in your hands now. What do you do?
First off, remind me never to fuck over Finn. That is disgusting. That is garbage. I'm half dead here, and that is disgusting. All right. So he looks at this, and he's just kind of taken aback, because this is the first time he's seen Finn be like excessively violent. But he can't think about that right now. He has to focus, and he sees Andala in that state. And so now he like kind of grips hold of these reins and kind of come on, and he'll steer the Anine into the middle of this. As far as my movement goes, I'm going to steer the Anine in the middle of this group, kind of wheeling it back to be a body in front of Andala, like this wall in front of her. And then I'm going to take 2 more out of the back of my quiver. And I'm going to try to shoot the winch chain cranker, the one that's cranking the winch on the back. I'm going to try to shoot him, and then also one who is any of the rest of them that are still trying to fire at Andala. If there's one with like a gun or something going on, I want to take it out.
Awesome. Yeah, you see him kind of reeling back on this. He's putting his whole back into it, these big, exaggerated motions. But he's like immobile here. You can line up your shot and take fire.
So the first one is going to be a 22 to hit. The other one is going to be a 17 to hit.
Both of those hit.
Okay, so 13 and that one's not that good. 9 damage on the second one. So total,
that's gonna be enough. Yeah, that's gonna be enough to just 1, 2. These arrows. One sends him flying over with the impact, sends him not reeled back in the shoulder. The other one catches him literally through one of his lungs. These 2 just like these shafts of arrows sticking out of him. It turns out arrows are still good in a world of guns. And he kind of reels back, grabs onto some handhold. He, unable to breathe, despite this breather attached to his face, he suffocates and drops dead. Now the winch is kind of locked in position now, but unmoving.
Come on, we gotta move you. Come on, get on the back.
Node. The bike is now to yourself.
Are there still any? Are there still any that are chasing me?
Yes. There are still those 2 bikes chasing you, but they've just been able to keep pace with you, and that's it.
Okay. Then he's gonna make a wide turnaround, pull a 180, and start heading back towards the group. And once he gets turned around where he's facing where this other battle is taking place, he's just going to open it up as fast as it'll go.
You feel just that tug on the engine. It sputters, and the roar of flame kicks behind you as you just accelerate it, as it like goes into that little red area on its little accelerometer. And you whiz past these 2 that were chasing you, leaving them in the dust behind, and they kind of like reel off and split off to try and follow you, kind of anticipating your turning as they saw you kind of do a wide arc. But you got the head start on them, and you're just gunning it fully, and you can make it next. If you do both of your turns as movement on this turn, you can make it right to this location on your turn if you wish.
Yeah, he'll do that this round. His intention is to try to drive underneath the wire of the winch, and he's literally going to do like the Native American thing where they hug the side of their horse. He's going to kind of do that. He's going to slide over the side of his bike and drive underneath of this at the last moment, trying to see if he can get one of them to run into it.
So you do so. You just like whiz through that gap in there. You duck underneath it, and you appear on the other side. And you see them coming at you with their spears and their guns, kind of ready to go. And we'll see whether they collide. It's now their turn. Now there's only 2 left now, kind of spinning. They've stopped now doing this circular motion. They've kind of peeled off now, splitting off, doing these wide arcs, and launch much heavier mortar from a distance now at the center where all three of you have kind of gathered. Almost even four. With Finn on the immobile bike. This big mortar cannonball, essentially, of just slag lands, erupting in this shower of dust and dirt, rocks and pebble and shards and shrapnel. And I'm going to need the three of you in the center, that is Rost, Andala, and Node, to make me dexterity saving throws. Rost, you're able to jump out and leap out just in time with your Anian is able to be quick of foot, but Andala, you're not so quick. You're staggering, you're injured, and Node, you're just caught completely unaware by this. As you just come riding in, you look back to see whether or not they're going to clothesline themselves, and you've just been caught by this shrapnel explosion of this mortar. So Rost, you're going to take 2 points of damage from this, and Andala and Node can take 9 of just piercing and slashing damage from shrapnel that actually explodes from this mortar as one sets off and you get hit by this. Finn.
So I want to say at this point, as Node is riding in, I think Andala notices him, and her blue cataract eyes kind of look up, and there's kind of like this hope that, oh my God, maybe I'll live. Just as this blast takes her by surprise and sprays her entire body, and she kind of, you could just see that all of a sudden like this red is everywhere on her chest, and she just kind of looks at you like all shocked and then crumples to the ground.
These perforations in your clothing seep red, these little pinpricks, these little spots, these circles of blood slowly spreading in this like mosaic of pattern until your front is completely drenched as you collapse to the sand. Finn, you're in this kind of weird grapple / melee with this rider as he whips around, what the fuck, with his sharpened makeshift axe as he goes and just tries to go for your neck here. That's a floor dice. Don't count those. That's a good hit. That's going to be 24 to hit. Betting that hits. It's going to be 7 points of slashing damage to you. He kind of whips around and just connects with the side of your something with this sharpened axe. And lastly, these two bikers that were pursuing Node have kind of made this long arcs to kind of follow him. Are just gunning it back to where you are. They've lined up these long poles, like we're talking maybe 15 or 20 feet long, these lances essentially attached to the side of the bikes. They've lowered them and have pointed them at this group that you're at. But this cord, this cable is just too thin to see from a distance. As one of them, this actual pole, this pike, snags on it. And it buckles and bends and snaps. And just the one end flies that way, harmlessly landing somewhere in the sand. But the other one whips back, skewering the rider, the driver. Like, just this bit of shrapnel comes stuck. And he just, like, gasps. He's trying to twitch and grab it, but he's just dead from the skewering. As this bike just nosedives in the sand, kicking up dust, spraying you guys at the last moment. But the other one sees this. He's kind of a little bit behind the other one, and he literally leaps from this levy bike before it collides with this. The bike crashes into this. It's a gore fest as the Anin and this perched bike all just become this one just tangled mess. Finn and your combatant, you're launched from this, as just from the impact sends it all into this obliteration, just this crumpled heap, just 20 feet now from the momentum. This driver, this raider that launched himself from this, kind of picks himself up. You see that he's limping now, maybe a sprained ankle or broken leg, you can't tell. But Finn, make me a dexterity saving throw, please, as you're launched. You're able to just like catch yourself. You're able to roll with the impact. The sand is soft the way that you've landed on it, and you roll maybe 10 or so times before you stop your movement. You're able to kind of get your bearing. You crouch on your knee. You're able to kind of get up. And the other one has landed maybe 10 feet off from you, and you see that he's getting his own bearing in a similar fashion, clutching at that that axe he has as he kind of takes these steps towards you. And Finn, what do you do now? Your combatant is about 15 feet away. Give me that attack roll. Yeah, that definitely hits. You dig into the area, not quite where that neck wound is, but somewhere in the shoulder, somewhere important. As that arm now kind of goes limp. It's not the arm that's holding the axe, however, it's his offhand. But that's still enough to kind of have him off balance and unable to properly parry, as people usually need two arms to fight. Get the huge upper hand here. Okay, so you launched, you kind of sent back about maybe 20 feet. You're kind of 20 feet from the beginning, so maybe 40 or 50 feet, somewhere in that range, to where Undala's corpse is. Yeah, I mentioned more like an L, that kind of an L. Yeah, because you're both kind of launched in the same direction. Yeah. All right, Andala, you are feeling your head is woozy as you slip in and out of consciousness every moment or so. Give me a death saving throw, please.
Oh, my dice love me. That is a 5.
That is a failure. As the red starts to creep in onto your vision, the sand on your face you start to no longer feel. Rost, what do you do now? Undala lies motionless at the feet of your Aineen.
So she's down, and who do I have around me?
Node is next to you. He's taken a bit of shrapnel to his back as he's kind of whizzed by on his bike. As the two that were pursuing him, kind of one was clotheslined, the other leapt from it. Just this giant wreckage, right. And you kind of see Finn climb to his feet, maybe 40 or so feet off in the distance.
All right. So I look to Node. I'm not going to be fast enough to get her out of here. Put her on your bike and get her gone. You understand? Let's do it like we did in the old times. I'll take care of us. I'll cover you. You get out of here.
Boss, I got you. We'll do it your way.
All right. He kind of looks to Undala, concerned more than anything, and he looks to Node. Let's not fuck this up again. And then he nods, and like with an assertive pull on the jowls of this Aneen, he's going to basically take the fight to these to the remaining raiders and kind of give the means of escape for these two since Node has the faster levibike currently.
So you kind of lunge forward on this alien. You can see Finn locked in combat with this one raider, and the other one that launched himself on the bike is maybe about 30 or so feet behind them and kind of like limping towards them with a spear in hand and a kind of this severed shotgun in the other, kind of just limping and hobbling.
So I imagine that like he sees this shotgun kind of getting ready to be marked for Finn, right? And just one arrow. As he's riding forward, he kind of keeps his knees buckled against the fur of this Anine so he can hold on tight, and attempts to launch an arrow right in the neck. If I can, if not the hand, at least, at the very minimum, the hand of the gun. Right, that's not bad. That's gonna be a 14 to hit.
A 14 hits.
All right, cool, man. And then that's gonna be 9 damage then.
You hit him in the leg.
All right.
This crumples him. You hit him in the good leg. He collapses on his own weight. His spear is dropped from his hands. His scattergun falls to the sand next to him. As he begins to crawl, as he reaches, he's grabbing firm on that just handle, the handle of the gun. What the fuck is that called? A grip. The grip of the gun.
The grip of the gun, yeah.
And like with the other hand, just kind of just like pull himself towards Finn. Just this paraplegic, just dismembered, terrible person.
So how far did you say?
He's about 30 feet behind Finn.
30 feet behind Finn. How far out from me?
Oh, maybe you lunge forward, maybe like 20 or 30 feet.
Awesome. So if you'd allow it, I would like to stampede my Anine over this crippled
Absolutely.
guy before he can get to his gun.
Can you make me a let's see. Make me an attack roll, please, with advantage. Instead of it being you, it's going to be your Anine. This is going to be a +4 bonus to hit.
Okay, so I got.
This is gonna be 2 attacks. Sorry.
Okay.
+4.
So I got a 12 and a 7.
Well, the 12 is good enough as you trample this this raider, and Anine 6 feet are gonna deal 2d6 +4 bludgeoning damage. You can roll that for me.
So 9 damage total.
And that just, you hear the snap of bone, the squelch of flesh, eviscerated to a pulp, the howls of a dying man, as just crunch, crunch, crumb, ribs snap, his neck breaks under the sheer weight of this Anine as you just pass over.
I kind of like give this look to Finn. I imagine Finn's probably not even paying attention to me right now, locked in this combat, the bloodlust in his eyes, but he just like wheels around and kind of gives a nod. If there's any sort of eye contact, there's this like, I got you covered, and then trying to go back and follow Node to an escape route.
Finn, you're locked in combat. This man swings his axe around to get to you. 14. Does that hit?
Yes.
Catches you. Sinks into your flesh. 5 slashing damage. He leaps back now, ripping it from your flesh. It's now the corroded metal leaves bits of rust behind. What do you what do you do?
Finn has been told his whole life to keep his magic, to keep the power, to keep the curse that he had on him a secret. To use it in ways that were secret that were... He was taught to use it in ways that weren't obvious. But Rost was right. He sees the bloodlust in Finn's eyes. He sees just this crazy grin. And with one movement, Finn reaches out his hand, and this green, disgusting glow begins to form in his hand. And it all of a sudden erupts in this huge beam, this bolt at this raider.
Yeah, it's advantage.
Yeah. No, I'm totally good with that because I think that's totally something that he would do. So with disadvantage, that's a 15.
Still good enough. Now, what power are you using here?
This is an Astra bolt.
Nice.
Yeah.
Give me some damage.
That is going to be 7 points of force damage.
Correction, 7 points of radiation damage.
Oh,
As imagine this high ionizing gamma ray of just terrible radioactive power punches from your fist, from your open hand, carving a literal hole through this raider, just melting his flesh and just like burning the sand directly behind him. Then you see through this like cauterized chest hole as he slumps dead.
And then Finn would hold this dagger piece between both of his hands, and he would just bring it down on this guy's neck where he had bit again and again and again, and he would just keep kicking him. And just this flurry of bloody spittle and screams and curses just erupt from Finn's mouth.
The camera is perched on the stand, kind of on the side now. We're looking up. We see silhouetted by the sun of Thoth, far in distance, just a mere shadow. Stab, blood spray, splatters a camera. Stab, blood spray, splatters a camera, as it slowly fills over with darkness, covered entirely by the blood of this dead man. With this, we're going to take a break. Go ahead and visit the washroom, the laboratory, or the fridge, or all three in that order. And we'll be back in approximately 10 minutes, though give or take because of time zones, because that's how time zones work. And we'll see y'all soon. We're back. Thanks for everyone for relieving yourself in a proper fashion instead of the improper fashion, which I find myself relieving myself in some number of times. I'm not going to disclose that number. So anyways, we're back at this debris, this detritus, this just terrible world of just gore, bloodshed, and just terribleness. I can't find a better word to describe it. As blood has mixed with sand, has mixed with glass, has mixed with shrapnel, with slag, with parts of scrap of these levibikes. Undala lies face first, perforated by shrapnel, dead. Finn is breathing heavily. The body, if you can even recognize it as a body, just lays in ruin at his hands. Rost looks as he does not need to draw another arrow, as every hostile breathing person here is dead. So every hostile person here is no longer breathing. I don't know why I said the word breathing there. And Node, where does Node find himself now? In this silence, this stillness that's creeped across this battlefield.
Node had already started to slow down to turn around whenever he realized that Undala was so gravely injured, and also at the recommendation of Rost. And so now he just kind of pulls up with his levibike, pulls to a stop, and then dismounts off of the bike and kind of walks over to Undala, kind of looking down, shaking his head. No, girl, this ain't gonna work. He's gonna kind of kneel down next to her and produce his mender. He's gonna see if he can't use one of the charges from that on her, if he thinks she's still alive.
You feel the breathing is ever so light.
So can Andala would, I think at the touch would kind of, her eyes would flutter a little bit, and she'd be like, I feel so cold.
No, you're just fine. We're just gonna get you patched up here. Just lay still. Don't say nothing. Save your energy.
I can't feel anything.
You're just in shock, that's all. Yeah, I'm gonna give you this dosage here. Hopefully it'll fix you up. He's gonna kind of pull this syringe out from his myriad of pockets and satchels and things, and he's gonna kind of try to find, knowing that she's a Mancer, he's gonna try to find the place where she usually injects herself. I imagine it's almost like looking at an addict's arm or something, where it's just, this place with all these swollen spots, and he's just gonna drive it right in there. And
so you drive it into her leg, and you push that sickly green liquid from the syringe just inch by inch into her flesh. You can see the green creep across her veins now as they kind of puff up, surfacing on her skin. It's almost like a spider web of green just spreads across her body. And it goes up to her chest. And her chest kind of expands, puffs, pops, sizzles, sparks with this nasty mending of your mender. It coagulates the blood instantaneously, mutating and just killing off everything nearby, giving her just a terrible scab on the front of her chest. But it seals the wounds. It's good enough. And so that is some number of healing, I imagine, the mender. If it's a roll, you can roll it if you just list me the number. Or I can just look in the document I'm actually kind of looking at right now. That could also work.
Yeah, I will look it up if we want to move on. I can take care of that on the chat.
Okay, you can roll one of your hit dice and regain that number plus con mod. And it uses one charge of 3. So I think a Mancer is a d6 hit die, if I'm not mistaken. So you creep to consciousness now with your chest sealing over with mutated blood cells that coagulate and form a lattice. You're dizzy, you're woozy, you're nauseous, you probably vomit. As you come to, you can feel the sand on your fingertips as you clench around some rock that creeps above the sand surface. You feel as a bunch of air creeps into your lungs from one great breath. The world snaps. You can see everything in vivid detail as blurry images, doubles, just come over each other and snap together in focus.
I know. Take it easy. Breathe nice and slow.
Yeah, and she would kind of cough, and there feel like some blood spittle kind of comes out of her mouth. But she's definitely looking a little bit better than she did a few seconds ago.
He kind of helps her sit up after a moment. He actually kind of goes over to where the jumbled mess of levibike and the anine are, and I imagine there was something to the equivalent of like a saddle blanket or something on the anine, and he's going to pull that out and actually try to set up some kind of like impromptu shade, essentially, that she could just kind of rest under for a minute while the rest of us kind of mill about.
It's snagged on some metal. You have to rip it to get it free, but you have it with this long gash. You had to cut through the threads to get it off. Your servo arm is strong enough to just rip it off entirely. And you have it. You pitch it up. You support it with something, some shrapnel or bit, to give you that shade, that lean to. All is quiet.
Finn is sitting by this slab of meat that was once a raider. And he's just sitting and he's looking down and he's drawing something into the sand with the bloody knife. Small little designs. Seems... He finally looks up after a while and he kind of looks around. Well, that was something.
Rost is there, probably nearby you, looking back and kind of moving the anine in the direction of the Ndala and Node, but certainly staying within your vicinity because he doesn't necessarily want to run off yet without bringing the entire party together. He looks to you and says,
what you don't understand, young man, is that this happens all the time. How often are you out here in this hellhole out here? Probably not often, judging by your looks.
Are you saying the sun hasn't marred my skin yet? That's nice.
Oh, yes. Let's refer to the skin on your bones versus my melting carcass. Yes. Now, let's see what we can salvage from these assholes. And then let's get back to the others. It's only going to be a matter of time before they they hear news of this party leaving, our blood trail will only get bigger.
Node is going to kind of be approaching the two of them now, just on foot. He's going to call out to Ross. Ross, you still know how to butcher?
Do I know how to butcher? Fuck off.
Just
Yeah, I know how
asking.
to butcher. Come on.
Well, there's a giant slab of meat over there that's rotting out in the sun and ain't doing anybody any good. Actually, there's two of them, but yours is probably a little too stringy to eat.
Yeah, no. Grit was nice, but she was an old girl. She ain't going nowhere.
Well, I'm sorry for your loss, Ross, but we ain't got time to grieve.
How's Zandala doing?
I think she'll make it.
Good. That's fair.
You see him look at you for a minute. There's this long stare.
You got something to say?
No. I was just
Maybe later.
concerned.
Concern?
Yeah. Considering the last girl I had you watch over, you didn't exactly perform to standard.
He kind of points that dagger, that slim dagger he had, kind of at him, not menacingly, but more just for emphasis. If I'm not mistaken, Ondala was with you whenever she went down in the sand.
Yeah, that was my fault. I thought I could get to her before that happened. So
Then
And he kind of grimaces and fucking takes a long draw from the breather, and it's that gurgled, like just disgusting breath.
come on.
maybe you and I, Ross, maybe we understand one another a little bit better. And we can dispense with this Anine shit.
Let's get the cutting. Come on.
That's what I like to hear. Node is not, however, going to butcher. That's not what Node does. Node instead is going to start picking over the other things, the non-organic stuff,
Right.
looking for salvage, and especially if you can find any doses of Astra that these jerk-offs might have had on them.
So you can give me an investigation roll, please, as you pick through the salvage, pick through the corpses. It's just too much of a bloody scrap mess to really find anything. So we do find in one of the, I want to say, like, compartments of one of these bikes. It's one that's in this great salvage heap. You see it, you open it up, and that glistening green sight of Astra meets your eyes. But it's exposed Astra, it's not in a vial. You see the cracked glass that once held it. And you see the steam, that acrid smell hit your nose as the vapor evaporates into the atmosphere, just completely dissolving and fading, dispersing to the wind. It bubbles off like a cold liquid, or like cold gas. My bad. It's too unstable. But in that you find nothing of note besides rusted slag bits, scrap bits that are welded together and fastened together. It's all shoddy work, nothing at all that could fetch any kind of price.
Are there enough of them that are still working that we could at least fashion workable rides out of for the other two?
Absolutely. Yeah, there are. Roll me a d6, please.
6.
Yeah, so between the 12 or so that had pursued you, 6 of the bikes are in complete working condition. As you're able to pull them out of the sand, see their engines still hum. Some of them had been unmarred by the conflict, and those ones still work as well. Although to say that they still work is kind of an odd question or an odd statement, because in your eyes they don't work, but also in your eyes they do, as they are good enough to get you out of this hellhole. But in any mechanic would say that these are just pieces of shit that would never work anyways. They'll blow up in a few weeks anyways.
So, while he's looking at the bikes and all that stuff, I think Andala would kind of gingerly get to her feet and maybe wrap that that covering around her, just kind of give her a little bit of warmth. And she would hobble over to where that one guy who had that gleam in his eye that was gunning for her, and check his corpse, to see if there's any irradiated vials on him.
And this is the one that Finn butchered to pieces and left just a ruin of a man.
Okay.
And this person, give me an investigation roll.
6.
You do not find any Astra on this person, but you do find the telltale puncture marks that read the rash around the insides of their elbows, that would betray a person that is a user. And at that you can tell by the swelling and the blackness of the veins around that spot that is a heavy user.
Is his bike still around?
It got smashed to smithereens by the clothesline tactic and the Anin. Because it was one with a harpoon on it. Right, it got dragged with that steel cable to a ruin of a mess.
How far off in the distance is that wreckage?
50 or so feet away.
Okay. I think she would try to stumble towards that bike. It'll take a long time to get there, though.
And as you stumble, what of Rost? Are you butchering the meat of the Anin?
Rost is taking time to butcher the meat of the Anin. Kind of, if it has water, if there's a water source on these Anins, that they actually store clean water in their bodies at all, then yeah, he would find a way to cut the clean being a open-ended definition.
So Anins, they similar to camels in that they have water storage in the form of fatty lumps that are dispersed throughout their body in these big areas. And right. As a butcher, I imagine you are versed in survival.
Yeah.
And you know of these, that when times get tough, you can just cut them off as if they were an organ. In fact, they have clear membranes. And so they're not like a water balloon. They're more of just like a giant sponge, if that makes any sense. It has the consistency of like dough.
Like a fat bladder. Gotcha.
More like dough. Like it has a squish to it, but it's definitely solid. You know that you can actually like puncture a hole in one and just like have it leak. It'll drip, drop by drop over the course of days.
Okay.
You can secure the water within it. It'll be riddled with, mucus or pus or whatever, but you can at least put it through a filter or boil it off.
Clean it. Okay. Nice.
And clean it
off. That's totally what he'll be doing then. And then that piece that he pulled from the wreckage, I think kind of eats at him a little bit. Right now, does he have that on him?
And what piece is this, might I ask?
Didn't he pull something from the wreckage in the cockpit?
Oh yeah, all that salvage gear.
Yeah. All the salvage gear, and then what was it? There was some sort of vial that he pulled, if I remember correctly. There was a tube, and I don't know if that was a wasn't the memory stick, but it was something that was.
I have a vague recollection of this.
You know what I'm talking about, right?
I believe I do. I
Okay.
cannot remember what it was because I am a great DM and I have a lot of notes. And so if someone remembers, they can put it in the chat.
Okay. But I remember that, so I'm wondering if he would think about it for a minute, especially because he wants to check to make sure it didn't fall out. It's like a small piece of tech that we somehow salvaged from that. It was like lorium. Yeah, it was like lorium.
Okay. Yeah. Oh yeah, so yeah, it was lorium, but lorium cannot be decoded by any like technology that you guys have access to. It is too, I guess, primitive / advanced. I guess it's like, it's ancient technology that's hard to retrofit with current devices because it's how complex it is. Your hardware doesn't match with it properly, but it's intact. That was the special thing about it.
Right.
And it could fetch a price in the market. That's what it was. I remember now.
So yeah, he'll at least look into his satchel as he's kind of like moving these bits of like these amines into his bag. He'll look at that piece just to make sure it's intact, that it hasn't cracked or broken during the slew of this combat.
You see it's intact. It has a sturdy frame of chromium and steel and all these layers of protections and glass, and it's a very sturdy device with a bunch of crossbars and stuff to keep it reinforced.
I think over the comm links, Rost will, as he's butchering, there's just like this sickening rip and like slice and sploosh of other sounds, and then he'll say, "We need to make this quick. In and out salvage. They'll be here soon. If one of those parties came by, there's only a matter of time before another one will show up."
It don't look like they had much of anything worthwhile anyways. It's all a bunch of scrap and junk.
Probably just the scouts then. Nothing from the major. All right. Let's clear up and head out to this. We know where we're going.
We head into Malik. Isn't that right?
Sounds about right.
All right. So, Ondala, he kind of calls over. Are you all right to ride?
And that she kind of turns, clutching. She's still kind of clutching her side where there's probably still a huge gash. And she kind of winces and says, "Yeah, I can ride."
I could help you with those wounds, if you would like.
And she just stares at you.
You can see, though, Finn is not smiling or shows any form of his usual antics. He looks extremely serious, extremely earnest through his the cataracts and his obvious almost blindness through the blood still pouring from his face, but he just kind of looks at you.
Yeah, and she looks back at you and is noticing that there's a, besides the gore that's all down your front, that your demeanor is a little bit changed, and she would say, "What do you mean? What would you do?"
You know, Ndala, my work, my job, I healed people.
You healed people so you could hurt them.
I promise I won't hurt you.
I can't very well just say no right now. I need this too bad. But I'm watching you.
I would expect nothing less. But if you'll have a seat. And he would kind of point towards some piece of bike or a rock or something that she could sit on.
And she would kind of collapse on it and probably like lets out a groan as she does so, kind of involuntary, as the pain is still very much there.
And so Finn would begin working quickly, his fingers very, very nimble, as he just kind of pokes and prods throughout your body, and just like looking, and then he is going to, you begin to see his hands, just for an instant you see this black flash almost, and then it's gone.
She would kind of recoil a little bit, but not enough that you can't continue doing what you're doing, but you can tell she's uncomfortable.
And he would just he's like, I do apologize. And he would begin to like take the blood from his face, and he would begin to like spread it over your wounds. And he is going to cast this, he's going to cast Revitalize. And he's going to bump it up, which would heal you 2d6. Okay, I will roll. So that is 6 points.
And she would look at Finn the entire time, like kind of not trusting, but as she starts to feel a little bit better, she would kind of relax a little bit. And
yeah,
thank you.
The wounds aren't like healed, they're scarred over, they don't look, and he even says they don't look very pretty, but at least they won't bleed everywhere. And he looks up at you and stares at you, makes eye contact while he's just bleeding.
And she shudders. Thank you.
He smiles. Anytime. How about the rest of you? Is everyone here feeling okay?
A little disturbed, perhaps, but no, I'm fine, thank you. You're about 6 different ways of crazy. You realize that, don't you?
He just kind of tilts his head at you, looking confused, and just kind of nods, and then slowly just smiles.
Ross looks back from his carving, wipes his hands of the blood of the Anine, and then looks at you and goes, I'm going to pass. Hard pass. Thanks, though.
I am helpful.
I
Crazy,
don't doubt that.
But helpful.
I mean, unless you can fix a fucking spine from that fall I took earlier, I don't think I'm going to get... I'll be all right. Thank you, though. And he's sort of like propping himself up now. now having gotten off of this anemone, he's having to prop himself up on that staff that he had earlier, kind of like, all right. And he looks, I think, at you, Node, as you're kind of bringing these. I imagine you're probably bringing these 6 bikes, whatever scrap bikes that you found. You're probably bringing them to the circle now, where he's butchering these things up. And he looks to his anine that's still there, Finn's anine that he rode, and then looks to the bike. And you can see, like, he doesn't want to take the bike, but he also realizes that they just got into this situation. So I think there's this moment where he looks between the anine, the current one, and the bike. And then he kind of runs his hand over the amalgamation of a handlebar.
I haven't rode one of these in a long time, Node. Wonder if I even still know how to use one.
I don't know if you ever knew how to use one, to be truthful.
You asshole.
With that, Ross is the first to notice it. As behind you, or I guess in front of you, you feel that on your back is less light, some kind of shadow. And it creeps and lengthens this great shadow from your feet, stretches onwards, farther past you. It begins to cover Node, cover Andala, and cover Finn. You look back behind you to see what's blocking the light. It's a great wall. A wall not of stone, not of metal, but of sand. A great gale, a great storm, a sandstorm. Andala, you notice on your personal device, it's on the fritz a little bit. Static waves in and out. You had it set to be looking at your current destination, which is hundreds of miles to the northeast of here. It says signal lost with a big error message over the HUD. The sandstorm is fast approaching. You see bits of debris fly up and surround as those raiders that are scavenging through that chrome dome wreck of that shuttle, that craft you were investigating earlier, gets swallowed up and spat out and just completely digested by the sandstorm, caught unaware by its quick passing. And you realize this thing must be traveling fast, far faster than anything can ride or move, and it's coming your way. What do you do, Rost, as you see this great harbinger of doom?
So it's huge wall, right? Coming at us.
Shit.
Nothing, even if we get on our levibikes now, there would be like nothing we could really do to escape.
You've got a bit of a head start. It's still a bit of quite a distance away.
All right, cool. He takes a heavy breath.
We need to get moving. We need to get moving now. We head down.
And he knows what that sound, that rumbling is.
You ever been out here during a fucking sandstorm?
No, I haven't. Sand doesn't exactly agree with my enhancements.
Sand doesn't agree with a lot of fucking people. You want to look back there?
Why? He kind of turns around.
Yeah. So I imagine we're talking face to face. So you're probably seeing, right? you're probably looking for a moment. You look, we're turned around, and then you look around and you see that
right there.
That's what that is.
That's what I deal with.
How often, Connor, would you say that these come around?
They actually follow a bit of a pattern.
Yeah.
They cycle around the area about once a month, these big storms. And they have these they kind of ebb and flow with these minor storms, but every month there's just a big ass storm.
Right.
And you realize you kind of look, you count it on your fingers, and yes, it has been 30, lunar cycles since the last one.
Right.
It's scheduled for 31 or something.
Right.
And you're like it's a day earlier, something. And you're like,
yeah.
Oh shit.
Yeah.
This thing is gonna look. You don't want to be messed up. You follow me. Got it?
And he kind of grips the front of your collar node.
Like old times. We get on these bikes. We ride over to that ridge.
Like he knows where they need to go to get cover. I imagine he's probably been through one of these before, so he knows where they need to go.
We get into those cave sets. We wait for it to die down, and then we head to where we need to go. You understand?
Yeah, I understand you loud and clear. Let's go.
All right.
And he looks to the other two. Are you guys gonna mount, or are we gonna mount bikes separately, or are we gonna do 2 and 2?
I think Finn would take his Anine.
He'd take the Anine back? Okay.
He wouldn't leave his precious Anine.
His precious Anine.
I think Andala, as soon as she would notice her device was going wacky, and she was already heading towards these bikes that Node had found and getting ready to go.
Node's gonna look at Ross. Is this Anine gonna make it in time?
Fuck.
And he thinks about it. He would have had probably an Anine out here in the wilds. He might. That Anine might. But Connor, I'm gonna leave it up to you.
Yeah, it's at the rate this thing's going, a normal sandstorm maybe, but not this fucker.
Not this. Okay.
Not this one. Yeah. The Anians is half as fast as these bikes can go, and that's too much time it'll take to get to those ridges you see in the distance.
And so I think there's this moment where Finn's just about to get on. What was the name of your Anine?
Gosh.
Did you name it?
I don't think I did.
All right.
But I think it's probably Tress.
Tress? Nice. So he looks to you, and you get ready to put your hands on the rein, and he puts a hand to you.
We need to move faster than this. Understand?
And then he, as much as I hate to do this to you, I'm gonna do it because he's just a heartless fucking bastard. He takes the small hand axe from the side, the one that he had butchered the other Anine with. And as long as you don't interfere, he's gonna just straight kneecap it so that you can't use it.
Ross, you always were a cruel fucker. And he pulls out his carbine and just puts a shot in the thing's head.
We're just both assholes right now.
And your Anine topples head first and then legs as they buckle, almost like a wave. The first legs and the last set of legs are the last ones to crumple. As your Anine dies from this.
And you see Finn's arm outreach. I imagine this all happens very, very quickly. I don't know that Finn would have even had a chance to really react. And you just see that his hand is outstretched, and as the Ainine falls, his hand just falls. And he slowly turns towards Rost. And just kind of, like when kids are upset, their head will be down and they like look at you through their eyebrows, like their eyelashes. And he would just do that, and he would slowly move towards you without saying a word, move to the bike that you're on and sit down on it.
Oh, this is gonna be an interesting ride. Fuck. All right. Come on, you scary bitch. Let's do this.
So for clarification, are you going 2 and 2 or 2 1 1? Or are you going 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1?
I think if Rost moved, Finn would move to that bike and mumble something about not being, like, not knowing. He would just mumble. He's like, I don't know how to ride.
and yeah, out of sympathy, it'll be Finn and Rost together. I think it'll be great. Oh my god, that's.
And so No takes his Harley Corpusson, and Andala takes this jury-rigged bike, and you kick off. The engines thrum. You feel that tug, that lift, as those propulsions lift off from the sand. The hot air billows and pushes it off, and you kick off and blaze to the northeast, to that ridge where you see safety, often a mile away or so. And you race. You lean down, you get that maximum velocity. You feel the wind flowing through your hair, billowing at your loose clothing, even making your breathers kind of flap loosely. Your skin kind of peels at this breakneck speed. But so too does this sandstorm behind you just gain and gain and gain and gain upon you. Soon you can feel electricity in the air, the static as your hair stands on end, as the dust particles that are in the sandstorm are rubbing together with such friction that it's causing an electrical storm, along with just this shrapnel skin shredding sandstorm. And all your electronic bits that you have begin to static and go on the fritz as sparks leap from them. They singe your hairs, they leave burns wherever the metal contacts your skin. And just as we can see this ridge gets closer and closer and closer, you can actually see the little bits of actual rock coming up now. You're weaving through these pillars of stone. We come to an end. And that is where the session ends, with the edge of this sandstorm grazing the back of our fleeing refugees. What is their fate? We'll find out next time on A Free Man's Will. And with that said, we'll do an outro of sorts, as we'll go around this way and have people introduce themselves. We'll start off with Karen, please.
I am Karen. I don't know what else to say. This is pretty tense. Just died. Having a lot of fun. Can't wait for the next session to find out if we make it or not.
All right, Chad.
Yeah, so this was awesome. This is super cool. I dig these characters so much. And Connor, you've really set the tone, man. You've set the tone for this setting overhaul, and I love it. Man, it's super cool. Other than that, my name is Chad. You can find me over at a little-known YouTube channel called Chad Nick, which I'm hopefully going to run games on at some point, because I keep saying that I'm going to, and then it's just a ball of nothing. Because I'm usually over here. That's what it is. I'm usually spending all of my gaming time over on Dice on Ice. So yeah, and I'm also 1/3 of a little-known podcast called The Dudes of Yore, which I love, with my buddy Jeremy here and our brother-in-arms, Jeff Doty. You can check that out over at Dudes of Yore. And then one other, I don't have anything else coming up right now. But, yeah, Dice on Ice. Yeah. And then Performance Check. If you want to check out last Lore Keepers game, go over there and check it out. It was pretty cool. I enjoyed it. This has been awesome. I cannot wait to see the fate of Rost and the whole crew trying to chase down this sandstorm. Please don't let me die. I'd really like to not die in one of your games.
Thank you, Chad. And Jeremy.
Yes, sir. Hey, everybody. I am Jeremy. I have the YouTube channel, The Erasmus Expeditions, where I run live plays, talk about gaming, post crafting-related videos, etc. And as Chad mentioned, I am 1/3 of the podcast, The Dudes of Yore, that can also be found on YouTube. Go check us out. Yeah, I'm having a ton of fun with this this character and this bonkers, bizarre, gross, worn setting. It's Harbinger, but it's certainly its own unique brand of Harbinger, and I really, really dig it. I'm having a lot of fun, and the party interaction is just sublime. So thank you for letting me be a part of it, and thank you to the other 3 players for making this definitely a game that I can look forward to when it does happen. And I'm definitely looking forward to session 3.
Thank you, Jeremy. And lastly, but not leastly, although it is hard to say who would be leastly amongst these amazing 4 people. It's like choosing your favorite child. There's one obvious one and then 3 ones that you can't choose who's the worst one. Megan, can you please introduce yourself?
So wait, am I the favorite then, or?
I don't know now.
I don't know. Or am I the hated one?
Guess.
I feel like it could go either way. But so yeah, hi. This is also my channel, one half of it, and yeah, check it out. Or I guess you're already here. So hi, welcome.
And with those eloquent words said, you can find all of these respective people's YouTubes in the description below, as well as the link to our product from Dice on Ice, a D&D 5e campaign setting that we've launched through Drive-Thru-RPG. You can get softcover copies of Cryfoth. It is similar, I guess, to this setting, but it's completely distinct. But if you generally like post-apocalyptic settings of dust and dirt and death, you'll like Cryfoth. You can see Cryfoth in action in like literally the dozens of other videos on this channel. That it all intrigues your interest. Click on stuff. I know you know how to use a mouse, so do that stuff. And in the meantime, it's been a blast. Thank you for playing in this game with me, you 4, and thanks for the people watching this in the past, present, and future. And Megan, will you take us the Cryfoth out of here, please?